Welcome to the Building Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Don Tarjanskis, and join us as we explore the world of construction. Each episode, we welcome a guest that shares career highlights and career advice, and hopefully inspires the next generation of construction professionals. Welcome to another edition of the Building Your Career podcast. Today, very excited to have on as a guest, Bola Ogunmefun from Tisserin Engineers. Bola, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Don. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. So yeah, really keen to get you on. I've been following your company for a while, some really cool kind of work that you do. But I suppose we'll start off where we always start off. Could you tell us a little bit more about the company that you work for and your position within the business?
Yeah, sure. Tisserin Engineers is a company that started probably about 5 years ago, and we are a small structural engineering practice, and we like to think we focus on community, sort of like social community and sports projects that people, the wider society, if you like, can benefit from, and that's where we like to work within. I'm the director of the business. I founded the company with a good friend of mine who has since moved abroad. We're a team of 6, and we do a lot of work with timber. And what we realised recently is that we've done a lot of work on with exposed structures, so structures that generally are left exposed and rather than being hidden behind finishes, plasterboards, or cladding or whatever you. So that's actually suits us. That's actually quite nice because we do spend a bit of time and attention and care on just detail as well as the actual structure. So where we're starting to find our niche, if you like.
That's cool, and I always say, don't hide the structure at all. As probably a bit biased as someone who worked in the architecture industry for some time, but I always like seeing, what you can do when the structure is exposed and the little things that you can do with it as well, so you can truly see how a building stands up and see the design side of things as well. But yeah. I know you touched on it a little bit there, but I saw that you did a lot of work in the timber and also the offsite manufacturing as well. So could you give us a little bit of guidance for our listeners who might not know the offsite manufacturing side of things, or the process, or really the use of timber? And a lot of our listeners, it's mainly steel and concrete. So could you just give us a little bit of an insight about those two markets?
Yeah, sure. I mean, offsite manufacturing has been around for many years, from post-war era when the government tried to find quick and more efficient ways, or even like quicker ways of building stock. It's recently, if you like, became popular, although in the recent times it's had a bit of a tricky time. And essentially, for offsite manufacturing, the idea is to try to build as much of the building's components away from the site as possible. So that could be in a factory somewhere or in a yard, transport it on the back of a lorry, either in small components or even, if you like, in volumes, in modules, and that's what we call modular. So modules could be a volume of space, so maybe one floor, or half of one floor. It's actually built, assembled, in some cases finished in the factory, put on the back of a lorry, and then actually delivered to site and lifted into place. So that's the idea, and with that you can try to control waste in many ways, because everything's under factory conditions. You can speed up time on site because, as you can imagine, spending more time in the factory and less time on site, it just changes the dynamics there in terms of where we spend our time. And in some instances, there is a bit of control on health and safety as well. Timber, offsite manufacturing, we've done a lot of offsite manufacturing, specifically with timber. There are other materials. There's precast, concrete offsite, not as popular because of the weight, and there's also light gauge steel, which we've done a little bit on, but not as much as the timber side. So offsite manufacturing can could cover a range of materials, a range of typology. But the idea is to try to control construction under factory conditions, so that when you are on site, you're reducing time and hopefully reducing costs, and at the same time improving the quality because it's under factory conditions.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for explaining that. I know that'll be really helpful for our listeners. So if we could just kind of turn back the hands of time for you then, where did it all begin for you in terms of pursuing a career in engineering? Where did your interest get sparked at a young
Jeez.
age?
Yeah, you're going back now. Let's have a think. I mean, I think I've always been interested in how stuff works. When I was younger, actually, I think like many engineers, architecture is the thing that turned my head, if you like. So architecture is what I initially looked at as a career. I was always into art, always did a lot of drawing, and I'm just thinking about it now. I haven't drawn or painted as much as I used to when I was younger. I used to do a lot of drawing, a lot of painting, sketching, and that, if you like, brought my fascination into creating something that other people enjoy, albeit it's not as functional as a building. Producing a piece of art, people enjoy and aesthetics of it, visually, and they can appreciate the quality of what you produce. With a building, obviously, it's slightly different from the engineering standpoint, because we're now looking more closely about how we can build it or design it for safety and efficiency, and being as efficient as possible. But I suppose that actually goes back to my initial point, as when I talked about, we seem to find ourselves in a zone where we're doing structures that are exposed, and maybe that was that by design, or was that by luck that we seem to have gone a full circle. So I think, I started wanting to be an architect, and ended up being an engineer, because that's the route that I suppose my education took me. And now I'm appreciating all of the work that architects do at the moment now, by spending time and detail and effort on making things look good.
That's awesome. It's almost come full circle for you, really, then.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously, the million-dollar question is knowing everything you know now, because what we're trying to do is kind of advise people who are looking to get into the engineering field. So
Yeah.
knowing all that you know now, and everything that you've seen and done, what advice would you kind of give to your younger self when you were first starting out in the industry?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what I always say now to the team in office, and even to the guys that I teach, I do a bit of teaching as well, so I'll probably touch on that later, is you need to have your ideas. Okay, come with your ideas. And I personally believe that our ideas are based on our lived experience. So advice to my younger self would be to experience as many different things as possible, because ultimately, is if you take in as much as you can, you are filling your ideas bank. You don't know it, but you're filling all these good ideas that you have in your psyche, that sometime down the line you will retrieve. Okay, so I think for my younger self, I'd say travel and read as much as possible, understand how things work, and don't take control of, I suppose, where you want to be, but be inquisitive. Absolutely, be inquisitive, be curious, and there's a level of detail that you could always find about something. Dig deeper, dig deeper,
Yeah.
find out, what assumptions they've made, and I think that's one thing I try to promote to younger guys, and do it in what you like, find out what you enjoy, and go for it.
That's an amazing answer, and to be fair, that is such a unique answer. We've never had that on the podcast before, and while you were saying that resonated with me so much, because I had this preconceived idea of what an architect should be when I was in secondary school, and then when I actually got to university and started studying it, that really opened my mind to looking at, reading a lot, looking at philosophy, looking at the arts sector, I got really into my music at the same time as well, but really just being a sponge for culture. And then, off the back of that, I wanted to explore and see architecture in different countries as well. So, yeah, I think that's amazing, because from a young age, if you're a little bit of a sponge to all of these kind of cultural differences and all these things that you may not think actually are associated with engineering, they form and shape your outlook and view on the world, and ultimately form and shape your outlook and view on engineering as well. So I think that's a awesome bit of advice there.
100%, 100%. Because I mean, you just got to look at the music industry, okay? Because as a youngster, you know, there was certain genre of music that I enjoyed, and again, you know, with some of the teaching that we done, we use this as an example, right? You know, the genre of music that we enjoyed was, if you like, created in the early '80s, late '70s, and then obviously it develops. But actually, they borrow ideas and samples from different genres from previous yesteryears, right? So, just because I'm interested in engineering, I don't just look at engineering. I look at architecture, I look at philosophy, I look at maths, I look at solicitors, I look at accountants, and it can enrich, you know, your profession and your outlook on how you see things and how you try to tackle problems. And as I say, music is a prime example. You know, you look at one song that is a hit today, that sampled a song in the '90s, which sampled a song in the '70s, which sampled a song in the '50s, right? You know, and that's the root. And actually, from there, that's different people's interpretation of that song, right? And that's why I feel, you know, it's great to get out there and just be open, be curious, and see the world, you know, and just have an open mind.
That's an awesome way of looking at things. I really, really like that. So obviously, you know, as a visiting lecturer, and we will touch on that just after this question, but, you know, obviously you've dealt with a lot of people. You've probably seen a lot of people continue their careers within engineering. But what do you think are the kind of the key characteristics that make up a good engineer in today's market?
So, yeah, this is a good question because I'm still trying to be a better engineer. But I think one thing I mean, if I was to say for myself, what I think, you know, we should be moving towards is everything that we talked about. Because, you know, historically, as engineers, we always learn from, you know, what the people come before us. The additional skill set is to things like, you know, I suppose the communication skills, keeping people up to speed with what's going on. And I think that's one thing that resonates with us as a practice that, you know, we are striving towards. And I think as an industry, we can be doing better, is, you know, understanding that concept of client relationship or customer service, in a sense that with our industry, it's quite an investment for what, you know, what you are actually responsible for quite a big amount of money, right? And you know, naturally people will become anxious if they're left in the dark, if they don't know what's going on. I mean, you just got to think about the time that you didn't know what's going on, and, you know, it can be worse than someone just touch points with you. So I think in today's world, engineers probably would need to not only be good at the technical aspects of it, and if you like the design aspects of it, and there's also the coding bit that we will touch on. But also, I feel that, you know, being great with updating everyone what's going on, the communication aspect of it, and, you know, just keeping people, if you like, clients and your collaborators at ease of, you know, where you are. And I think that's quite powerful and quite useful.
Do you know what that is? That's refreshing to hear from a business owner. That's important to you, because you wouldn't believe the amount of people that I speak to that they feel as though the directors are holding all the information, or holding the keys to the castle, and are just not passing that information on or passing that down, whether that be, you know, information about the commercial running of a project or the commercial running of a practice, or indeed just the kind of the training and development and passing that information on. Yeah, it's really refreshing for you to kind of hear that. And I suppose that ties in quite nicely with, you know, you being a visiting lecturer as well, and kind of almost passing your information on. So could you give us a little bit of an understanding about what you're actually doing as a visiting lecturer?
So yeah, sure. At the moment, I currently run a course at a university called the AA, and we teach timber and hybrid structures, so timber structures and timber structures, if you like, with other materials. So it could be steel, concrete, hence the hybrid element to it. We are teaching structural engineering or conceptual structural engineering to architectural students. That's essentially what we're doing. We're teaching them how to deal with timber, ultimately because we are aware that to have good timber projects, you need to deliver good timber projects. What that means is, once we have the whole industry does well if we have good presidents, and we have good presidents if we have people who are comfortable with the material, who know what they're doing, and who can deliver and develop the material in the right way. So what we're trying to do is try to give architects, and I'm conscious that architects rather than engineers, the skills to be able to deal with timber structures or timber projects in a confident way, especially at the early phase. Because I don't know, I mean, others might think different, but to us, we believe that to attack a timber project, it's actually can be a different way to how you tackle a concrete or steel project.
Yeah.
It's not always practical to say we will design a building like this, we will put the rooms there, we put the columns there, and then the final piece is what material is it going to be? It's going to be timber, or we sub it out for concrete, or we sub it out for steel. There's actually a bit more to that. And timber's all about the life cycle. It's all about yes, how we design it, but where do we get the timber from? What's the capabilities of the timber? In terms of carbon, how can it improve and help us in reducing our carbon emissions, whether that be in body carbon, operational carbon, or both. And understanding what happens at the life cycle of the material, because up until recently, structural engineers were pretty much design, hand over the keys, thank you, see you later. Yeah, only call me if there's a problem. Whereas actually what we need to do now is actually design, hand over the keys, come back a couple of years later and say, how did it go?
Yeah.
How is it? Is it still working? Or is it not working? Or is there bits where it could have been a bit sharpened the pencil? Because ultimately we only learn as a society from seeing how what we've done before performs.
Yeah.
And that's basically what we're trying to teach with the students. Understanding with a timber mindset, it's not just about the old way of design, buy, move on. I've done it before, I will do it again like this way, because the way you did it before actually may not work. So it's an interesting course. We get people from the industry in to come and speak as well, to share their experience with timber. So we've had some very good speakers, and they've been really good actually, and we've been actually quite privileged to have them. And the students, they love it. They love seeing what people are doing, because again, it's another way to inspire them.
That's awesome. Honestly, hearing you speak, then I really could have done with someone like you when I was studying architecture, because I ended up getting a job on a building site just to learn how stuff was put together, because I just wasn't being taught the technical aspect of it at all. So I was proactive, but yeah, it would have been great to have someone like you back in the day, really. But just leading on to the next question, obviously there's a lot of knowledge out there, there's a lot of information out there as well, but if someone is just starting out and wants to kind of learn a little bit more to see if the industry is for them, where would you kind of recommend for people to go as a bit of a starting point to start learning about the industry?
I mean, I think social media is quite powerful now compared to what was available when we were younger. So YouTube, there's lots of social influencers who can talk you through a day in the life of engineers. But ultimately as well, what I would do is seek out local businesses, not necessarily the larger ones, but the local 4 people practice, 6 people practice, 10 people practice, and see what they're doing.
Yeah.
And see if there's opportunity to just be in that space, and try and understand what they do and how they do. I'm a great believer in taking control of your development,
Yeah.
of your career development, your life development. So if you was to seek out opportunities, you could also couple that with, as I said, look at YouTube, but just don't be afraid of the answer no.
Mhm.
Because just because someone says no doesn't mean that's the end of it. Just seek out other opportunities. So
Yes.
ultimately, I think to find out more about the industry, there's a wealth of information online. Absolutely. Go to your local practice, find who they are. I think back in the days we would look at the yellow pages. What's the equivalent of yellow pages now? I don't know. Google I suppose.
Yeah.
Go and Google and see who's there. And have a chat with them. Because a lot of the time you'll be surprised how much people are actually happy to share, or how much people will be happy to talk about what they do. So I just literally just knock on the door.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, God, this takes me back as well. To get my part one placement, I actually sent out 65 letters to
Wow.
architecture practices in London. So it was a case of,
Yeah.
sometimes people start the search and reach out to a few people and start learning a bit of information, and then they might get rejected once and then they kind of give up. But it is just a case of perseverance. As you say, don't be afraid of getting knocked back. And if it's something that you're truly passionate about, there's loads of information out there. So as you say, take your career development in your own hands and just get out there and start learning, really. But for people who are kind of considering getting into the industry, who have done the research, who are like, yep, this is definitely for me,
Yeah.
what kind of educational route would you recommend? What are the options? Are there any kind of courses or certifications that you would kind of recommend?
I mean, I think now there's the number of options. Obviously, there's the traditional educational route, which
Mhm.
depends on how early you decide to go down the architectural or engineering route, and then that consists of GCSE A levels or GMVQ or BTEC now these days, and university, and then work. There are some opportunities to apply for apprenticeships,
Mhm.
where after your if you like post GCSE level studies, or just before you go to university, you'd apply to a company and actually get a job. So it's
Mhm.
a day release. You get a job with them, 4 days working, 1 day studying at his university, which is another option. It's a great option because the fees are paid for essentially.
Mhm.
So that could work for some people. On top of that, it is literally just try to get as much experience as you can. See what companies are out there. As we said, before we talked about local companies knocking their door, but actually
Mhm.
look at the large companies, see what they're doing, and see what they're doing in terms of the type of work that they're doing, in type of buildings they're working on, what countries they're working in, and think about how could you get to where you want to get to. So
Mhm.
you know if if we want to work, for example, in the sports stadia, if for me, I'm a great big fan of football. I had a love for sports when I was growing up, and you start to align yourself with those practice and see what educational route they need to be able to work in those practice. So there are various different routes you can go down. Ultimately, there is a educational element to it, but it can be a mixture of formal education and work placement, or direct straight formal education until you get to the work placement. But what I would say is that, and this is quite key, and I say this to the guys in the office all the time, and even into the people at universities, that if you do go down the formal education route, or you go down the apprentice route and you land that job, that's not the end of your learning. That's not the end of your learning, no way. Like, you've got to continue that, and that's why it's important to make sure you enjoy it. You find something that you like and enjoy, and continue that love for learning, and continue that thirst for getting new skills and new ideas and being curious, because you have to manage your career essentially.
Do you know what? I really like the way you said that then, because some of the larger companies do get a little bit of a bad rep, but as you said, if you're looking to work on those larger scale projects, if that's your passion, then indeed go for it. But ultimately, if you're working on more cool architecturally led projects, then indeed those smaller companies would be for you as well. I think the one thing that I would recommend to our listeners is there's lots of accreditations out there now which would guarantee that a business cares about you a lot more than businesses that don't have them. For example, I know Simple Works were on a podcast. They were B Corp accredited. I just wanted you to touch on as well, because I know there was a kind of Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business. So I just wanted you to kind of elaborate on kind of what that meant and how that trickles down to the well-being of the employees.
So Goldman Sachs 10,000 business was an interesting one, because what they try to do is they look for businesses that they could help, if you like, grow and grow at a sustainable pace, if you like. So I think ideally with something like the Goldman Sachs, you meet lots of people in there. You meet people from who's been in business for 20 years, and you meet people who've been in business for a couple of years, and understanding how they manage their team, how they look after their the welfare of their employees is so valuable, because if there's a problem that you see, someone else has already had that problem. So, it's always been a good mentorship. So ultimately, things like how we work, the working hours, whether we work in the office or not, how we deal with social, if you like, social events together. That's all stuff that you can get information from someone in the Goldman Sachs group, because someone has been there. So I've got, if you like, a number of mentors which has helped me dealing with some of the issues that we has found, and working out how we can be a better practice for people ultimately, because as you say, ultimately people are the practice, right? So people are the guys that you are looking out for.
Awesome. I really like that, and the fact that you're again, this goes back to always learning. You're speaking to people in similar situations or who have been there and done that, and not just kind of making it up on the spot, which I know a lot of kind of small business owners do tend to do that, and that sometimes they get it right and sometimes they get it wrong, but there's no point of reference to kind of be learning from, really. So just leading on to our final question then, I think there's a lot of people who are kind of considering the industry at the moment. I know the whole point of this podcast is really to promote the industry to the younger generation, but what can the industry do as a whole to kind of attract, nurture, and also retain that young talent as well?
I think attracting, what industries can do to attract it is to, I suppose, be a bit more visible, maybe, because we were speaking before about knocking on your local engineering company or architectural firm or whatever. There's a lot to be said for business in a community, and how they can be a high street company without actually being a high street company. And what I mean by that is that high street companies are visible, okay? And but you don't let just everyone in through the door. So there's stuff the industry can do, and there's stuff that people in a structural engineering industry can do. So community work or getting involved in community activities, whether that could be volunteering at someone else's initiative or creating your own initiative. Ideally, visibility to the industries is quite key, in my opinion, because probably the reason why I said I wanted to be an architect when I was younger is because I didn't know there was such thing as an engineer. I didn't know there was such thing as a structural engineer. So that's a way the industry can attract talent, retain talent. similar in my opinion, because ultimately, however way you put it, engineers actually are serving the community. Okay, we are serving society, so everything we do is for the better of others. And in the way where we are the people in the background and quietly getting on with our work, but considering there's a lot to be said about the risk that's taken by engineers and architects and the long hours. Dealing with that is a key thing for keeping people in the industry. It's one of those industries, I suppose, that you need to have a passion for your work, or you need to enjoy your work. Because ultimately, you're incentivized to do things, and if you are proud of what you produce, or you're proud that you created something that helps others, that goes a long way. But yeah, I think the industry's got. I think the industry can do a lot to be visible, to promote the profession, to go into schools, do community work, and I think, as I say, that's not just on the institution itself, but also on individual practice. Individual practice can all do something in their communities, whether you're based in in East London, or Hackney, or Brixton. There is likely to be a community around where you are. So get involved, see how you can help the local schools. And that's what we would say.
Awesome. Paula, I've genuinely enjoyed this conversation. I thought it's been really insightful. You've shared some absolutely wonderful ideas to our listeners. It goes without saying, I'll include a link to Tisserin Engineers in the link below. So to all our listeners, please do check out their website, check out the cool work they're doing. But it just leaves me to say thank you so much for being a guest in the pod.
No, thank you. Thank you again for having me.
No worries. Joining us on the Building Your Career podcast. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest and learning about the different career paths available. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe so we can reach even more listeners. And if anyone wants any free CV advice or simply wants to know the options available to them, don't hesitate to get in touch.